welcome everyone. This is AI for small business. So what we're trying to do here is there's so many things happening in AI out there, and it's really hard to make sense of what actually matters, what you should be paying attention to, especially when you're a small business owner with not a lot of time. So that's what we're trying to do with this session. This is a monthly thing. We'll be on here each month, probably second or third Friday, and just out here to help you understand how the heck to use AI in your business. And so I'm going to hand it over to John. John is an excellent AI expert, Addie as well. That's kind of what this whole panel is. And John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Alec. Happy to be here. So I'm John Down. I'm a professor at the University of Portland. I've been here for nearly 20 years now. Mostly teach entrepreneurship, and I've been doing a lot of stuff around AI as well. And have a background in entrepreneurship from Oregon State prior to coming up here, and have been involved in AI for over 10 years in terms of pretty intensely. And of course, that's even just ramped up after November 2022. So happy to be here.
All right, Addie.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I'll go ahead. Thanks for having me. My name is Addie Olson. I am the founder of Cascadia Solutions, which is an independent AI and data science consulting firm. My background is in applied statistics, building large language models, and specifically in natural language processing. But now through Cascadia Solutions, looking to help small businesses, nonprofits, and startups navigate their AI journey all the way through implementation.
All right. And I'm Alec Kaufman. I'm the founder of Annovation. Annovation is pretty much process improvement. It's under the umbrella of small business innovation. So how the heck do you leverage technology as a small business? That's what Annovation is all about. A little bit about how I got into AI. Obviously, the ChatGPT moment, November 30th, 2022. We're not even 3 years. It's not even 3 years old yet, which is crazy to think about. I was working in traffic engineering, and then we spun up our initiative to explore AI and machine learning. And I realized that this was basically not just this was more of like an all business problem, not just a, traffic engineering business problem. And it really changes the whole game with the things that you can do with AI. And so I wondered how small business was going to be able to actually capture this, especially those older, established, existing businesses. And that's where I founded Annovation, not even a year later after ChatGPT launched, and been doing that ever since. All right. So that's kind of how I got into AI. But like, what was that moment for you guys where you really got into it? I know you kind of covered it in your intro there. What was that really getting into AI moment for you guys?
Addie, why don't you go next?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess the getting into AI is maybe more of just a semantics question for me, since kind of academically I've been in the realm of kind of building the models that fuel modern AI today. So I've kind of been in the world before AI as we like more popularly know it have been around. But yeah, I would say when I would say kind of like in my last like full-time job, we kind of started calling some of our projects like AI, or we almost would focus more on using the word augmented intelligence, since artificial intelligence can kind of sound scary, especially kind of at that time, maybe like 3 years before the big ChatGPT moment was happening. But now I tell people, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad people care about the things I do now, and it's a big part of society, and especially around the business world as well.
Yeah, and for me, my undergrad was in engineering, and I have worked in academia since 1993, and a lot of what I've done is sort of entrepreneurship and technology and sort of commercializing technology. And then, so that was a big part of what I've really done since the mid 90s. And then really in terms of my sort of launch into AI was kind of sparked by when Stephen Hawking, the physicist, said this was around 2013. That AI is going to either be the best thing ever for humanity or the worst, and sort of just really thinking about that and kind of trying to understand what he really meant by that. And and then of course there were some cool things happening with AI like AlphaGo and things like that that were all kind of pre-Gen AI stuff that were catching a lot of attention. And so the other kind of interesting thing in terms of context was really up until Gen AI kind of came onto the scene, most people in the field thought that by the time we got to real advanced AI, like artificial general intelligence, AGI, it was going to be sort of the year 2100. And so spent a lot of time kind of thinking about this future off time. And then, of course, that's all just been tremendously accelerated in the last 3 or 4 years. So, yeah, so that's really how I kind of got into it.
Yeah, that 2100 line has shrunk quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's kind of the challenging piece of dealing with AI news and sort of all the things that come in around AI. Because there are people who've been thinking on this topic and trying to understand this topic for a very long time. And there are people who are just opening up and just realizing this AI thing and trying to understand uh, what the heck does this mean for my business, for my life, for everything going on in my world. And they hear things like the AI 2027 or some of the other claims about, like, especially from Demis Hassabis, like what he talked about with the job destruction. Those things will just freak people out. And I think there's a lot of people getting freaked out by AI because they just hear these things in passing, but they don't have enough time to dig in and actually get to the context of AI and what's actually going on and where we're at today.
hmm Yeah.
Which, like, where we're at today, I mean, you effectively have this large language model. It's very effective pattern recognition, and depending on if you call pattern recognition thinking, then that's kind of where we're at. Are the models thinking? Are they not thinking? Well, they're doing really complex pattern recognition. Well, what are you doing with your brain? It's also kind of pattern recognition. So, we're kind of in that middle ground.
hmm
Um, but I think as far as, you know, gotta love dogs, right? Oh,
Uh, I was a little worried that the dog and the cat were in the same room, but I'm sure they'd be friends if they were, but they're not, right? So that's your
Yeah,
dog, right,
cats are
Alec?
all over here.
oh yeah, that's me.
Okay, good.
We just got a package and they knocked on the door.
Mm.
So of course she just goes nuts. But anyways, um, so
Yeah, you are.
what
Yeah, go ahead.
so what are some of the things that caught your eye this month? What are some of the things that you thought were interesting?
Well, we were going to talk a little bit about GPT-5, which is we can talk a little bit about that. Maybe to start with here. So that was OpenAI's new model. There was, quite a lot of sort of anticipation for that coming out, and it came out fairly recently. They changed some things in terms of how to use the models, in terms of the selection, whether you're going to choose a reasoning model or GPT-4o before that. And Yeah, and so I think that's something that's had some challenges in some cases, right? But I think a lot of people like the concept there that you don't have to, as a user, you don't really have to worry too much about which model you want to select, because it's sort of making that choice. And by this, what we're talking about is whether the model is going to give you kind of a quick answer that's not going to use a lot of compute. It's going to be quick, but it's not going to be sort of the reasoning answer that you might want in certain cases. And so I've been using it for different things, and am finding it, quite helpful. If I'm just using the regular model and not specifically choosing GPT-5 thinking, then you can do things like, I was actually comparing a couple of academic programs around AI, because that's a project I'm working on. And I asked it to give me a thoughtful comparison. I sort of gave it access to the two things, and it went into its thinking mode automatically. I didn't have to choose it. So that was a kind of a interesting little take on how to use the model. So I think that's the thing, right? We'll get you by using these models, you learn more about how to use them effectively and what they're good at and what they're not good at. So that'd be maybe something to
Yeah.
start with.
'Cause it looks like we lost Alec for a second, but I was gonna agree with you, John. That was one of the big things that stood out to me was kind of like the automatic model selection, and I'm wondering if it's almost trying to kind of directly compete with Perplexity and how Perplexity will automatically choose which base model to use for your query, just depending on the query itself, and that's kind of been part of their value that they're bringing to their product since kind of since they started. So my first thought was like, oh, I wonder if ChatGPT, like OpenAI, is trying to kind of get in on that proposition. Of course, keeping it within their ecosystem of models. But I think it is nice and kind of this like longer term move towards um, just having things be more user friendly and hands off. I know we've talked about the concept of like prompt engineering and how important that really is in the current day and age to get the results that are gonna provide the best value to you, and how over time ideally prompt engineering becomes more and more intuitive,
Hmm.
something you don't need to like take a class or course in or even like practice using AI to get really good at. So um, yeah, so I was really interested in kind of, yeah, that the automatic model selection really trying to get towards just less friction, more user-friendly adoption, having to have less experience and domain knowledge to get what you're looking for.
Yeah, and the point you were making too about how the models are constantly looking at the other models and what their features and capabilities are and trying to
Yeah.
decide which are the ones that seem to really resonate with users and that they're going to try to incorporate. And, that's one of the things that in some ways makes it hard to keep up with all the changes that are going on and trying to decide, oh, what is the best or right model for me to use. But then
Hmm.
the flip side of that is that a lot of the modern models are going to have similar characteristics and similar performance capabilities and things like that. So in that sense, maybe it doesn't really matter too much whether you're using Microsoft Copilot or OpenAI's ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or Gemini or whatever the model is that you're kind of leaning on. Yeah. One other thing I would just mention too that you were saying there, I was talking to someone who is quite a heavy AI user and has built some kind of AI products for their company, and they provide services for large law firms. But he was telling me that he was having really good success using AI models to develop detailed prompts that then he would use, right? So he would just give it some
Mm-hmm.
short instruction on what kind of prompt he wanted, put that into GPT-5, and then get a nice detailed response that then he would use as opposed to writing all that out on his own. So he was really excited about the results, and this was somebody that's quite a heavy user and quite experienced. But I don't know, do you guys do that?
I'll often use
Sometimes,
use
sometimes
AI
I've
to
done
prompt
similar.
AI,
Hmm.
things like
Yeah.
that.
Is there a downside to doing that? Do you think that you end up maybe getting something that you don't really want, or do you think that would be good advice, let's say, for someone that's using AI in a small business setting?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it can depend. I think it really depends on the use case. But if you're looking for something like super, super duper structured, um, and I guess I was saying, like I guess there's kind of like the echo chamber, like downside of things of like,
Hmm.
if the same model is coming up with a prompt that's going back into it,
Yeah.
there's kind of like less oversight and human in the loop there, and things that could be missed,
Hmm.
and whatnot. But at the same time, it's kind of almost just like apples to apples of like uh, just at least like the phrasing and how things are going through that might help get something more
Hmm.
effective than how you might word it naturally. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that's a good example of this idea of experimentation with the models to learn kind of like what does work. And maybe you get Gemini to write your detailed prompt and you use that in GPT-5 or something like that, and you find, ooh, that's better than
Hmm.
if I get GPT-5 to write the detailed prompt and use it in GPT-5, maybe something like that. But yeah.
There's kind of
Definitely.
two big ways that I'll use that. Um, Oftentimes, if I'm starting something and I don't know where to get started with it, I'll say, I want to do this. And then once I tell it that I want to do something, then I have it dig deeper on how would I go through and do that. And then if that structure makes sense, then I'll say, okay, what's what prompt should I use to get that output?
Mm,
So then I'm making sure that it's going to give me the prompt for the thing that I actually want. The other way I'll use it is to deconstruct something. So if I see like an image that I want to emulate, so I'm like, I want it to be similar to this image. So especially if I'm using image or video type things. So if I say, I want a video that's similar to this style, what is the prompt that you would use? What prompt would get you this video? Um, and you could do that to actually prompt the AI model to pull that off of a video, but you could also just go to Sora or Google Flow, and you could see the prompts that are behind these different images and videos and things like that.
hmm
Yeah. Yeah, and I think kind of talking about like the your video example is kind of this like context generation, and a lot of the models have very big context windows now, which means your prompts could be very long. The examples of what you want it to look like can be a lot larger, and yeah, like using the same model or different models to really hone in on that context when you want something to look a specific way is big, and especially I think in the small business use case around kind of like content generation, branding, and marketing, like capturing that brand voice
mm,
and values and personality can really it can kind of be helpful to kind of do this almost like two step where we like figure out exactly like the context. We have like what we want to generate, like the output, but figuring out how to use AI to either summarize or distill or retrieve the correct context to make sure that we're fully embodying, in this like marketing example, like the brand voice. Like for example, like maybe we only use the words we and our instead of like, I or the company, and kind of like gathering that context like specifically through a different prompt or different AI model to again feed into a further prompt for an output.
hmm Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that kind of gets into agents a bit and sort of the agents and the customization that you can do with that. There's also a big piece of content content window. And I think a lot of people think that it just kind of has an unlimited content window. If I upload a book, it's probably going to grab the whole book, right? And it's like, yes, it will grab most of the book, but here's the problem when you do that file upload, it grabs as much as it can and then it stops at some point. And so that's where you might want to use something like the daunting word of RAG. But
Mm.
Addie, can you maybe give a little bit of an explainer of like what is RAG? Like when would you want to use it, and how is it different from
Yeah.
just uploading a regular PDF to a model in ChatGPT?
Yeah, totally. So RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. So they're types of generative AI models similar to like the ChatGPT you use. But the easy way to think of it is it's kind of like ChatGPT, but it's only pulling from a specific knowledge source, kind of like a library of data or documents that you set it to look at. And so the kind of that retrieval augmentation piece is that it's only retrieving information from the knowledge source that's already there versus like the true Gen AI models are focused on generating novel content, like a blog post that's never been written before versus like I'm trying to go back in my library of blog posts and find all the ones that are similar to my holiday one that I'm trying to make this year or something. So I think coming back to like the small business context, RAG can have a lot of kind of great use cases in kind of that info retrieval space more than the like content generation one. So it's like, we have a lot of context and information, maybe a bunch of like training manuals, and we want to quickly find which manuals are the most relevant to this question, or, maybe down to the specific paragraph of like, I just have a really specific question about this one thing. that happens in my company and it's documented somewhere. Like ChatGPT doesn't know what that is. It may be like, oh, here's some best practices of like how different companies do that. But RAG is kind of this like wrapping that kind of like question answering information generation around that like specific source knowledge.
So how difficult is it to actually build a RAG or set up a RAG, would you say, Addie?
um, I don't think it's that difficult. There's two kind of factors that you scale on. One is the size of the data that you want to have in your knowledge source. If you have like SharePoint with, you know, like a very large, a bunch of files and it's really large like that, kind of makes things more computationally expensive, just larger, bigger processes to go with it. And then the model that you want to use. So the foundation model, or we call it in the biz, we call it the embedding model. This is the model that is turning all of your data into kind of like building that vector representation. Sorry, I'm trying not to be too technical right now. Basically, like encoding all of your information into a way that the model can retrieve it, as well as interpreting your prompt. So depending on how fancy and advanced we want that model to be, that also kind of scales the cost and complexity. What is kind of interesting is that some of the bigger companies are kind of trying to get at this built in, especially Google and Gemini, and as well as like Copilot. So like a lot of people are in the Microsoft universe, they have a
Hmm.
SharePoint. There are basically like three different options through Copilot right now where you can just have a RAG off the shelf. One is like a no hands through Copilot Studio, I believe, and then all the way up to like going into Azure and having a developer like code out and build a specific model for you, as well through Google and Gemini too, because they have like Google Workspace. You maybe have a big Google Drive with all your documents there. They're like Gemini integrations as well are kind of trying to get at that piece
Hmm.
similarly. So it's kind of a move for, kind of like the more like business workspace providers, versus like when you think of like Claude or ChatGPT, they don't really provide like ways for businesses to store documents. So it's not kind of something that they are pushing off the shelf. But like if you wanted to build a RAG model, you could use like a GPT, like a ChatGPT model as your base foundation model there as well. So that's that's kind of where it is right now. So like off the shelf, if you're using these like big workspace providers, it's fairly easy to build a custom one at this point. Uh, I've actually had a conversation with some people who are currently trying to vibe code this. It sounds like we're not quite there yet.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
might need more of like a technical expert to make it happen,
Hmm.
especially if like your use case is more specific. But
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What about there's a couple things that come to mind here. One is if you are just sort of personally wanting to interact with all this data, you could kind of do that through a notebook LM, right? Rather than doing
Mhm.
RAG
Yeah.
possibly. But that's not something you could necessarily share across your organization or with your customers in order for them to kind of prompt it. But
Right.
what about uh custom GPT through Chat GPT? Is that also kind of a RAG that you could share with people in your organization if, let's say, everybody has access to ChatGPT?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good point that like in their kind of enterprise solutions where they have these, they kind of are like, we'll build you this custom GPT and yeah, and I'm not sure exactly on all of their offerings, but it definitely has these kind of like workplace assistant type things where it's like
Hmm.
we'll go through all of your documents and then, you know,
Yeah,
similar to just typing in chat GPT, it's just in referencing your internal documents.
yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, that's like just through enterprise, those enterprise
yeah.
contracts.
So I guess just a nuts and bolt thing for using OpenAI's ChatGPT, if you're a company, then the standard, what is it? The standard plus contract an individual might have is the
Mhm.
$20 a month, and then the enterprise version I think is $30 a month. At least it was when I last checked. Um, and then that provides certain things around data security and things along
Mhm.
those lines, right? And then of course, if you're a, a high level user, then you could go with their pro account, which is $200 a month. Alec,
Yeah, and
you wanted to go.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people on the pro one, on the $200 a month one. Same with Gemini. Gemini has the same thing of their AI
Mm-hmm.
Ultra
Yeah.
offering.
Yeah.
And I think that um, they found that there is a market for people who want to very heavily use these things. And unless you're a very, very heavy user of these things, you're probably not going to need the pro level one. But the plus
Yeah.
one, the one that's the 20 to $30 a month, is pretty handy. If you're a small business and you use Google Workspace, you actually already have all the Gemini
Hmm.
Pro features, so you're already on that plan. And so, if you're paying for that for all of your team, then you already have that in Google Workspace. And if
Yeah.
you so RAG, um, just to kind of summarize this for people, it's basically the difference between uploading your entire book and then uploading something where it's able to search the book and find the relevant context, and then grab just those important pieces. Because if you upload the book and it can't, and the length of it basically surpasses the like context window, it'll put as much as it can in there and it'll just stop at a certain point. But if you do it in RAG, it can actually search, find all the relevant pieces, and then actually respond to you better that way. So that's why you might want that difference, and you'll find it. People have probably used RAG before and not even realized it, because some of the Microsoft will do that in the background, Gemini will do that in the background. And then if you want to do these like Gemini gems or custom GPTs or ChatGPT agents, or sorry, Copilot agents, they all have just the most confusing terms for the way that they build basically a custom version of their model. But that's basically the three main ones: gems for Gemini, uh, Copilot has agents, and then ChatGPT has custom GPTs.
Okay.
It'll just say GPTs, I think, and then you can click that. And
Yeah.
anything you upload as a knowledge source there should upload in RAG, so that'll actually give you that
Hmm.
benefit.
Yeah. And I was gonna say this is a perfect tee up to one of the articles that I wanted to bring to discuss today. 'Cause as we were talking about costs, there's
Hmm.
a Forbes article which maybe I'll see if I can share it in the chat here for
Oh.
everyone. But the title of the article is about how specifically cost companies are targeting cutting AI inference costs to target small business customers. Kind of talking about like what like a typical AI stack might look like for a small business, like could, be just like a $30 a month that could get up to like 200 or $300 a
Hmm.
month,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of breaks down where's that cost actually coming from. And it's mostly from the hardware side, for
No.
that compute costs and that inference. And so it's kind of talking about this like new competitive landscape to try to bring those costs down by changing hardware and innovating in the hardware space, specifically to build hardware that's like made for processing AI, um, so that workloads can be cheaper and basically these like subscription costs can like start competing for those smaller customers based on size. Because yeah, let me see if I can share the link here. Because it's pretty interesting. It kind of talks about how NVIDIA is like the big giant for the chips that all of these models run on right now, and quite a few players are trying to disrupt that space, um, as well, and like specifically doing it to target those smaller business customers.
And it might not be that the 20 or $30 per sort of site price comes down, or per user. Uh, but a lot of the companies, obviously, they've raised billions of dollars in funding, um, but they're not necessarily making money on some of these models, especially as they add more and
Right.
more reasoning to them, right? Because I mean that does take a lot of compute if you're using
Hmm.
GPT-5 thinking as opposed to just a quick and dirty answer kind of thing, right?
It does, yeah, and that's like especially when I work with some of my clients, a big thing is that comes up is like what's the environmental cost of using these models, and so kind of this new push to reduce kind of that energy uses and
Hmm.
compute usage around GPT can have a big effect there, not just on like the actual cost of the compute, but on, the environmental cost for all of us living on this earth. But it's interesting, as you were saying, kind of like the business models of these like larger AI players, um, seeing that, yeah, right now, there's kind of this like freemium model, and there's still a lot of value that you can get on free tiers and low paid tiers.
Hmm.
But how is that going to change? And I know that can also be a concern for business owners of like, okay, as we, if we kind of like institutionalize how we're doing this and using this, like, what if these providers, you know, change how they're, change how they're doing the pricing and tiering and whatnot, and what cost effect might that have on us?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say this article does have a glaring typo, which is a little disappointing. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. The typo I thought stood out to me as funny because I'm like, I'm sure someone used AI to help with this article, but probably not for that one headline where it says
Mm-hmm.
why this matters for your bottom line, not your bottom line.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because AI wouldn't generally make that kind of typo, right? Um,
Right. Yeah.
Everything's going to end up in words typically with AI. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
typically spit out
mhm.
misspellings.
Well,
Mhm.
one last thing on this um, topic that we've been talking about how companies can use their own data
Mhm.
uh, to answer questions for employees in terms of what they're doing within their company or possibly for potential customers. I think about like being here at the University of Portland, if we can make a better experience for potential students to ask their questions and get better answers based
Mm.
on actual data that we can upload, that kind of thing. And one other sort of mode of doing that is creating your digital AI or a clone basically for representation of your company. And I did that for my own digital clone. And in a way, it's trained on my content, whether it's things I've done. I could upload this kind of video, and it could learn from that, plus all the stuff I've written and things like that. And then it also has an AI model to answer questions and things. But yeah, so that's another way that companies can potentially um, build or use AI to help with a customer experience if they want to learn more about the company or the work people are doing and that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure how that's going to evolve really, but it's pretty interesting, especially as the voice stuff. I mean, Alec, you were asking about kind
Mhm.
of new things. Voice in the last month or two is really getting good. It was super easy for it to train my voice. So if anybody wants to try that, it's on delphi.ai/John Down, and you can talk to the digital version of me and ask me questions. And I've been surprised at how good it is at answering certain questions and things like that. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's such a kind of just that great point of like knowledge management and retrieval within organizations. Like, a lot of information we have is documented and written down, but a lot of it only exists in certain people's heads and like in the small
hmm,
business context. But there's few employees, like, usually it's like, oh, Jim has the answer to that. Jim knows everything about this, but that information might not always be written down. So, like Don, you were saying, like getting more into this kind of personalization and even, yeah, kind of like the AI clone or like specific kind of emulating agents there, I think is really big as well versus like, all of our documents can be great. Some of them might be useful, some of them might be useless, but Jim still might have the answer here.
hmm. Yeah,
And that info might still just be living in his head for now.
yeah. That also gets a little bit at I think Alec, you used the word freaking out earlier about what AI could lead to, and if you're Jim, you're thinking about, what, I'm going to get replaced to the clone from Jim, and then they may not need Jim anymore. But
But like
Sure,
also
yeah.
Jim can do other things than answer that one question that he gets asked like
that's
10 times
true.
a
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
Hopefully it just
yeah.
makes Jim that much more valuable and you're kind of leveraging Jim in a way that you weren't able to before. So, hmm,
Hmm.
Well, and John, if
Definitely.
you want to add that your link to the
yeah.
chat, that'll go out to YouTube and it'll
Mhm.
go to the live Riverside feed and it I was trying to get it to go to LinkedIn. It doesn't look like it goes to LinkedIn, but I'll copy the comments that we put in that chat and put them on the LinkedIn one afterwards so that you can um, so that people on LinkedIn who are watching this back later can actually see it. The the thing that comes to mind actually for me, um, talking about how this evolves for businesses, is I remember a couple months back actually, this guy was using AI and he was using Gemini, and basically he would ask, oh John, if you put it in the live stream chat, it's the one above the studio chat.
Okay.
But he's on Gemini and he would ask it, so it's connected to his Google Drive. His Google Drive has all of his meeting recordings, and he was asking it questions about what's going on in the business and what are the things that I should be working on in the business. And when it's doing that, it's pulling all of his internal meetings and actually like reading and reviewing all of these and then giving him feedback on what he could be improving in the business. But it's looking at the business as a whole. So that this sort of chat with your business style is very interesting, where you're actually able
Mm,
to chat with the business as a almost like an entity separate from, you know, the just like you're not talking with just the database, just one piece of the database. You're talking with like the business. And I think if you flip
sure.
that to the sales side, obviously gate, gating off all the other components, you don't want it to tell people about, you know, all of the elements of your business that you don't want public, but which would be interesting. If you had people able to just ask your business questions, that might be an interesting application where you could just talk to a business or you talk and or like the mascot of a business. So imagine if you talk to the Geico Gecko about getting insurance eventually or something like that. I mean, I think all these things are very possible.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring in too, is we've kind of maybe been focusing on like internal use cases, but like external facing as well, like for
Mhm.
the actual, you know, business, whatever, whatever, how you interact with people, like what information do they need to know to, make a decision to work with y'all or buy your product, or when they're using, when they're already a customer, how can we make sure that, fueling their success by having the information ready as well. So that's a really good point about integrating, both on like internal operation side as well as for external facing.
Mhm. Well, and it also reminds me of like people can now they can attend a meeting where they send their AI note taker instead of actually going to the
Mm,
meeting.
Mhm.
Um, Probably, I don't know if you can do it exactly with a live, but if someone sent something to this, right, and they sent it and they're like, just watch this and give me all the highlights.
mm,
They could, and then they
Mhm.
would, they'd miss some great moments, like when my dog started barking and my internet went out. But they'd also miss some of the nuance points between. Um, and so like there's some interesting pieces of how these things can make you more productive, but also how I think it's more multiplying your time and allowing you to actually show up where you want to show up, and you choose more deliberately how to spend your time.
mm,
Yeah. And the idea of, sort of multiplying your time or saving you time in some ways, right? That's interesting too because like for example, I've been kind of trying to use AI to do more of my emails. I just sort of how to approach that, I've got various models and things, but I use Word and Microsoft and have the embedded Copilot within my Outlook, and it'll you can give it what you want it to say, and it'll generate your emails and things, and then just sort of like sending that off to yeah. So what I've been doing actually is I put a little header in my emails that say, hey. Um, After giving it some direction, this email is mostly written by AI, kind of run an experiment. Let me know if you don't like it or you find it annoying or you just have any feedback and stuff. But it still feels kind of funny to do that. to a lot of the people that I want to send emails to. And then sometimes people will send me a note back and they're like, oh, okay, or whatever. But also I'm finding that it still takes almost more time than if I just wrote the email because I'm trying to kind of go through this, right?
Mm,
So maybe that's another lesson that you can't necessarily expect to just use AI, and it may instantly save you a lot of time depending on what you want to do, but things like this, when it takes some time to try to figure out how do you want to use it to make you more effective and efficient, it takes a little bit of while. Yeah, at least for me, and I think that's probably not too unusual for most people.
One of the ones that I think is just so interesting is there's the people who use it for outreach. So there's the whole AI outreach piece.
mm,
And then on the other half of AI outreach is AI response. And so you'll notice that like sometimes you have those automated spam callers, right? And they're just trying to get to your inbox, right? And they're trying to rank and so that they get in their inbox. And actually there's a whole thing with email marketing and yeah, there's a lot there. But basically, they're using an automated system to do that. If you're using an automated system to respond to that and save you time, there's effectively AI on this side and AI on this side. And, you know, how do you actually get to the person? And I think that there will be probably a marketing thing in the future that is how to get not just to the AI model, but actually to the person. And so that the AI actually flags this and says, hey, this seems important enough that you should know about it. I don't know what that's going to be, but that's
yeah,
probably going to be the
definitely.
next version of SEO in a way.
Yeah, I think a
Well,
lot
the
is
next
changing there,
version
and
of
I also
email
think,
marketing.
yeah, email marketing. And I mean, I think this I feel like this problem in email marketing is something that's been around for a long time. Like, how do we
Mhm.
get people to actually read and prioritize this? And kind of as like technology is increasing on maybe both sides of it in the automation spectrum, it's just increasing. But I think another just really great use of AI sounds kind of general, but is on this way of prioritizing and ranking, and kind of thinking more like on the technical side of like machine learning models. Like usually, we're looking for like the most correct answer for something, but most of the outcomes are actually like a ranked list of like, here's actually all of the contenders and how well we think they're going to do or not do. And so, kind of in that prioritization piece of like, yeah, here's all my emails. Which ones should be the highest priority? How should I
Mhm.
allocate my time? So I think that will also be a space where AI becomes useful is, as we're saying, like multiplying our time, but helping us prioritize like what should float to the top of my inbox, um, and why, or what big decisions or what big projects should we prioritize? Maybe we have like 4 AI projects to choose from. Maybe kind of the next level here is like how do we then most effectively choose, what the best next decision is or prioritize what that might be. So that's kind of like another layer into that.
Mhm.
I mean, Apple has the priority notifications. Google and in Gmail, you'll see nudge as a feature where it'll pop up something where someone hasn't responded for a while or hasn't responded in a
Mm,
couple days or something like that. Those all seem in line with that.
yeah, honestly, those kind of annoy me. They're like, "Do you want to respond?" And I'm like, I will, thank you, eventually. But
Eventually.
Uh-huh.
eventually as these things become more personalized, hopefully those become even more insightful.
Mhm.
Mhm. Well, and I think it'll be interesting because, like, have you gone back to generic ChatGPT, like just opened like an incognito tab or been signed out of ChatGPT? It is a different experience to ask that questions than to ask the model that's basically you've been talking to for a while.
Mm. Yeah, definitely that shared context, or that, yeah, the kind of context history that GPT uses now for sure. Just made me think of something, but it's gone. If it comes back, I'll bring it up.
Oh, I mean, there is that other piece of news of people who are really attached to their GPT-4 models, the 4.0 models. Did you
Mm,
guys catch that?
Mhm.
And were
Yeah, they
really upset when OpenAI basically. So OpenAI turned on ChatGPT 5, and turned off their other models. So 4.0 wasn't really available for a lot of people. I think they made a legacy version now, but it upset a lot of people who had spent time talking with these AI models. And 4.0 is generally more agreeable. It tends to say things and think that you're always right.
Hmm.
Um, and GPT-5 is not that. It's a lot shorter, more correct and answers that are less if you tell it, look at this if you're like, look at this pencil and it's like that's a pen. Rather than look at this pencil, it's like, oh yeah, what a wonderful pencil.
Yeah, and so they did that on purpose with GPT-5, right? Because they were getting criticism of you could tell it whatever, even if it was a bad idea, and it would tell you, yeah, that's a great idea and stuff. Um, but but yeah, people maybe missed that. There was also a little bit of um, people that had built automation routines based on GPT 4.0, and they didn't quite work the same way when they switched to 5. So, it's also kind of hard to know how many people that is because there are hundreds of millions of users, right? And so, even if it was a relatively small group, which could be hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands, there's some good stories there too. They're kind of fun to talk about and stuff. But, hmm
Yeah, definitely. And something that I noticed that kind of stuck out to me on there is like, at least in the past, OpenAI's model has been that like once they launch a new model, they open source the other model, and so
hmm
you can go and like download GPT-3 and different things from Hugging Face, and like you could use that in your own business and run it yourself if you wanted. And we're talking about like eventually lowering kind of those compute costs could be more and more possible if you're like, this
hmm
is the version that spoke to me, or this is the one that worked in our business processes. Let's just
Yeah.
implement it locally. That's
hmm
possible. But with this GPT, when they launched GPT-5, they released what they're now calling GPT OSS instead of just the actual model itself. So it's like a specific version that they've crafted to be open source, and
mm
they say it's like performs like with the same parity as the model. But so it's kind of an interesting business choice now that they're not just like open sourcing the models that they're not currently have like using in their production product, but kind of like crafting their open source offerings as well going forward, and like yeah, making it clear like this is not actually GPT-4. This is our open source version of it. But
hmm
still for the same thing, it probably will perform similarly, if those people want to do a local implementation.
Yeah.
Well, I think that um I'm just going to explain local implementation why you might want that. Cuz
Yeah.
it right now when you ask ChatGPT a question, it goes from your computer over to a server that is running ChatGPT. It's not like ChatGPT's on your computer. The model is not really something that you can run on your laptop for GPT-5. But with the open source one, that is actually depending on the model and the way and your laptop, that is something that's in the range of being able to be run by a laptop. And that's something that would sit on your laptop, something you could actually just ask questions of and use, and it's directly in your laptop, so it doesn't have to go anywhere. You could be out in the middle of the woods, no internet
mm
connection, and you could be using AI if you needed to. So there are ways when you might want to use AI, and maybe it isn't useful for internet connection reasons or cost to run it, so the amount of times you'd have to run the model or certain other applications where you might want a local model. Now, the cautionary note here is if you do that, it is there's a lot more building out that open source model and a lot that's getting a lot more into the weeds, but there are some benefits there if you have some AI applications that require type of that type of use for open source software.
hmm
And it's open source and
Yeah.
open weights, which like Addie, do you want to explain a little bit about weights and how that changes things?
So yeah. Um, I don't, we have 10 maybe.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, but I was
I have
Maybe
gonna
one more
say,
thing
the
I wanted
one
to
minute.
talk about too.
just to
So.
tag on. Yeah, I was gonna tag on a little bit to like that was a great explanation of running something locally, and I think for small business owners, depending on kind of like the size and scale, local can be easier and cheaper. Also, if you have sensitive data or sensitive processes and they can run inside your closed system that already has all the security protocols um, in place, then that can be easier than like investigating a vendor relationship where you're sending all of your data to eventually sit on someone else's cloud and be processed there. So, and it's again kind of this like this story of kind of this like local implementation versus cloud implementation has not just for AI been going on for a long time, and for kind of like smaller use cases or someone has like a server of data that like actually like sits there in their office on a machine, and now that machine could be running models and doing inference right there, right
Mhm.
sitting next to you as well. Um could be pretty useful. Yeah.
But if by chance you happen to have joined this live and made it all the way through to here, and you're like, I've never chat prompted ChatGPT before, or like just learning what ChatGPT is, or some of these other AI models, don't don't do open source. Just stick with the regular LLMs because that's gonna be the regular large language models or the regular like your ChatGPTs, Geminis, things like that, because that's gonna be the easiest place to start.
Yeah.
So we are getting a little bit close to the end. One topic I thought I maybe would bring up. So Addie and I were at the summer soiree last night, which was the AI Portland and the Tau Technology Association of Oregon kind of combined event at the Kiln. And I was gonna, well, there's one thing I was gonna sort of mention, and then Addie, I was thinking about, just the people we talked to, sort of like what were some interesting topics there. But one unusual thing that happened, I don't know if you even heard about it, was that while this event was going on from
Yeah.
6 to 8 p.m., there was one or more people that spray painted the cars in the small parking lot and the kiln building there. Um, and they sort of saw this as only a pro AI event, I think, and they were kind of protesting back to kind of what you were saying, Alec, earlier about, and what I was saying too about this could be the worst thing ever for humanity, sort of some of that. And then when I was walking out, which was close to 8, there was some Portland police officers there, doing some investigation, and they were cleaning it up too. But um, did you hear about that, Addie? And any
I
thoughts on that,
did.
or
Yeah.
if you want to share from last night? It was a great event too, by the way. It was
Yeah,
a lot of energy.
it was an awesome event. Yeah, AI Portland is a great organization for people of all skill levels and interests. Really kind of like open and welcoming for people to come and explore their ideas around AI or just chat with other people and get questions answered. Yeah, I ended up leaving the event, I think, before you did, and I had brought my bike, which has a new little paint spray stucco pattern on it, which is kind of
Wow.
interesting. I
Uh-huh.
honestly don't mind at all. This is my old commuter bike. I don't even
Wow.
know if anyone would notice that now it is has some new paint details. But yeah, I found that interesting. I think there is I think there can definitely be a lot of opposition to AI, especially at least what I see is from kind of the environmental concerns inside of things as well. It doesn't seem super clear exactly kind of what was going on there, but yeah, it was definitely interesting, and like knowing that like this is contentious and will bring about change, and change is hard and new for people. I'll say, yeah, some of my other takeaways from that event, I heard from some people that do marketing for dentists, super interesting, around how their board wants them to incorporate AI. And I feel like this is a really common story that you hear is like we have key decision makers that are interested in AI and we want it to happen because and so
Mhm.
maybe I'm like the more pro AI side versus the anti AI paint people. But yeah, so there is really still just kind of this question of like, what does that mean? You know, do we integrate AI into the product that we serve our customers? Do we use AI
Hmm.
internally, kind of like we spent a lot of time talking about today, to improve our business processes,
Hmm.
maximize our time? Um, and yeah, so it's an interesting space where I think maybe more the like technology forward companies or industries have more answers to it versus the like, you know, marketing for dentists seems like a little bit removed. And it's like, how do we answer that question of like, what's an effective use of AI here? And I, you know, maybe that's like something we can kind of like start to dig into and break down in other sessions. But
Hmm. Yeah.
um, yeah, just kind of like a common thread that I heard.
Hmm.
I don't want to go too far over time, but I do want to get to the anti-tech thing that I think is really interesting. It's like the the thing is AI has been here for a little while. It's if you're looking at the things that are powered by this pattern recognition thing, it's all over the place. And there are a lot of big benefits of AI. I think there are people who like to fixate and focus on the downsides of it, but there's a ton of benefits here and things that it can do to really help us get our society to where we want it to be and actually have that flourishing that we hope we can have, where everyone is able to live this much better life because we have these systems in place that actually allow us to have more time and abundance. So there are downsides and there are upsides, and the goal is to get the upsides with and mitigate the downsides.
Yeah.
So we
Which
want to make
which
it so that those downsides don't happen. And if you're if you're fearful about AI, I think, which rightfully so. I mean, you read the AI 2027 paper and things like that, that's not helping anyone be less scared. And those people are just scared and they don't know what to do. And it's like, I think learn about it, talk with people about it, and start having the conversation. Don't go around spray painting, though. That's not helping anyone.
Yeah, and maybe we can talk more about it next time. But I'm personally someone that sees the trajectory that we're on and the fact that we're, in this AI global arms race. We won't talk or try to work with China. We have no AI regulation. I'm someone that thinks we do need to kind of change the trajectory. I'm in some ways glad that people are, I don't, again, not the spray painting stuff, but let's see if we can get some politicians that are willing to talk about, doing some reasonable regulation about the problems we have with AI today around, energy use and that kind of stuff, and then these future potential control problems and stuff. But right now, we're not on a great trajectory, and I'd like to see that change, and I think it will. Um, and that's what we're going to need to do, I think. So,
I think
Yeah,
talking about it, though, is always pretty beneficial.
yes,
So we'll keep talking
definitely.
about it.
Hmm.
yeah.
You'll be on this again next month, but also you two are both up to some interesting things. So can you tell people as we wrap up here, just kind of what are you working on and just like where can they find you?
Well, let me jump
Oh,
in first
okay.
then, if that's okay. And just, I am putting together an AI executive ed program through the University of Portland, and we're launching that on September 23rd. It's going to be an awesome program, especially for people that are trying to implement AI into their organization. So please reach out to me. You can email me at my fairly memorable or easy email to remember, which is just down@up.edu. Or you could talk to my clone and, because I do see everything. I can see those conversations that people have with my clone, which is also sort of, there's maybe a bit of an ethical thing in there too. Um, but yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm full time with Cascadia Solutions, working with small business, nonprofit, and startup clients. You can find me on LinkedIn at cascadiasolutions.ai or email me at addie@cascadiasolutions.ai. I have a free consultations if you want to just talk through where you're at, or even just catch up and get to know each other. So definitely reach out.
All right. And then I'm Alec with Annovation. You already know that if you're on this thing because it says Annovation all over the thing. But basically, you can find out more stuff about what I'm doing at annovation.io. This is a monthly series, so this is a series where we try to go live. I'm trying to go live kind of each Friday, um, and just talk about something that's going to be the future for small businesses that they should be thinking about. And then I also have started up a conversation that's AI Fridays. So every Friday, 9 a.m., we're talking about AI. That's in the Annovation community, and you can also find the event through the Annovation events tab. So if you go to annovation.io, click on the podcast, scroll down, you'll see all our events there. Or it's also linked several other spots if you just start looking at the Annovation things. All right, that is it. So, uh, anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, it was fun. Looking forward to
Thanks.
seeing what's up next month.
Absolutely, looking forward to it. And I'm going to play us out and then hang on for a little bit. I'll end the live and then your video will keep on uploading. All right, I'm going to play us out here. See you, everybody. If I can find it. It takes a little bit sometimes. I got to get someone else who's just going to jump in and play these things.
You don't need a
Maybe an
DJ.
AI.
I do need a DJ.
Yeah.